Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us on a Tuesday. My understanding is that we have a full board of phone calls that are waiting on hold. I promise you we will get to you as soon as we can. But the lady we have with us on the line right now, she's on the Mesquite City Council. She's running for state assembly, and she was a part of a group of Nevadans who protested a ban on gatherings of 10 or more people at places of worship. They drove down the strip in the pouring rain on Easter Sunday. Her name is Annie Black, and she joins us right now on the line. Annie, I appreciate you joining us. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us. We might agree with some stuff. We might disagree, but I always respect anyone who comes on that might have a different opinion. I have a feeling we might disagree on some stuff, but let me start by asking you this very important question. Why did you find the need to be a part of this group that was protesting this ban of gatherings for 10 or more? Tell us why you decided to do that.
Well, I don't think that there's anything more important than our rights, and clearly, in my opinion, this was a violation. And I guess I've spoke as I was saying in the interview I did with RJ. I've spoken out against the governor's closures of essential and non-essential businesses, and I thought that was bad enough. But to come after people trying to worship on the holiest day of the year is pretty extreme, in my opinion, especially when they're trying to do it from their cars, which is pretty safe. So.
Okay. So let me ask you. You said there's nothing more important than our rights. Is there anything more important than human life? Because there are a lot of most health professionals across the country and across the world, quite frankly, are saying if you gather in a group of more than 10 people and you're not practicing social distancing and someone in that group has the virus, and as you know, I'm sure you know this, you don't have to have symptoms to be carrying the virus. I'm sure you would agree you're putting people in harm's way. So why is it more important for you to pray than the health and safety of others? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, first off, I mean, conservatives are the party that protects life. I mean, for the most part, we are against abortion, and we think that there's a right to life. So I would.
But what does abortion have to do with the coronavirus? With all due respect,
I'm just giving you. When you said, is there anything more important than life, I'm putting it into context. Clearly, no. Us as a conservative party, we don't think that there is anything more important than human life. But if you are in your car with your family and you're not out congregating with people, and that was the whole point of these drive-in services, was you could get in your car by yourself or with your family in a parking lot, turn on your radio, listen to the service, and never come in contact with
I don't have a problem with that. No, I agree with you. Let me be very clear on that, Annie. I have no problem with that. We're in agreement there. But as you know, there are churches throughout the country. Kentucky, one. I believe Florida was another one, if I'm not mistaken, where that wasn't what was going on. There were actually hundreds of people gathering inside the churches. In fact, we have a story of one man who was a pastor in one of those churches that defied orders. He contracted the coronavirus and died. So I agree with you with what you're saying. In your car, listening to I think that's great. I have no problem with that at all. But would you agree that hundreds of people going into a church and gathering is dangerous and shouldn't happen?
That's not what we were protesting, though. We were protesting the governor's order that people couldn't go to church and do drive-in services on Easter.
Okay,
so I
fair
think
enough.
If you would have been protesting, if you would have said, hey, come out and protest 100 people gathering in a church, not practicing social distancing, that would have been a different story.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that. And I'm glad you, quite frankly, I'm glad you cleared that up. I think that's a very, very important distinction. So are you on the record as saying you agree with me that hundreds of people going into churches and not practicing social distancing is not okay? You're not okay with that?
Look, I think we're all adults, and we know that most people, given this situation, have complied with what the governors across the country have asked them to do, including most churches. But, I mean, at the end of the day, we are adults. We need to be able to make our own decisions. So I'm not going to go on the record as saying anybody should or shouldn't do anything. I know what I need to do for my family to keep myself safe. And I think the whole point here is that, the people need to be responsible for their own self. If you choose to go put yourself in a church with 100 other people, I guess that's your decision. Am I going to do that? No. But I'm not going to tell other people that they can't go to church.
Okay,
because,
I hear you, but here's where we're going to disagree. It's not just
Sure.
about you. Let me give you an example. If I decided that I'm an adult and I want to go into a church and I want to pray, and I don't know whether I have the coronavirus or not, and I happen to spread that virus to other people in that church, which is very plausible, you understand it's not just the people in that church that are in harm's way. It's everyone, you, me, everyone. You know how this virus spreads. It could be somebody, for example, I can go to church, I might have the virus, I can spread it to people, and then some of those people could go to a supermarket or a gas station and spread it to others. So while I understand in some aspects what you're saying, well, we're all adults, we need to make our own decisions, the problem is if people make irresponsible decisions, they affect others. I compare it to drunk driving. If you decide to get into a car and you're drunk, you're not just putting yourself in harm's way, you're playing Russian roulette with society. So you understand where I'm going with this, Annie, where that it's not just your responsibility, but you're putting everyone else at risk when you decide to behave that way. Do you get that?
I do get that. I guess my response to that would be, well, why do we have masses of people at the grocery store on top of each other? Why do we have construction sites still open doing construction? Like, why did we have golf courses open until a week ago, right? To me, if you're going to make that argument, you have to make that argument across the board. You can't pick and choose where people can congregate and where they can't. And then people will say, oh, well, the grocery store is a necessity. Fine, but you just because you go into the grocery store and it's a necessity doesn't mean you're at any less risk than you are going into a church. So why
but if you don't buy, no, I understand, but there's no proof that says if you don't pray, you're going to die. If you don't eat food or drink, you will die. That's just a fact. As far as the golf courses go, find me a group of golfers that, the last I checked, the most people that could go in a group is 4 people. So I don't agree with you when it comes to the golf. I do agree with you that we should have banned golf altogether to begin with. But I think golf is very different. As far as the supermarket goes, here's where I will agree with you. And by the way, some of the supermarkets are only allowing a certain number of people in there. So I agree with you. We need to be consistent. But again, I don't want to compare, and we can disagree on this, and that's cool. But I don't want to compare people buying food and, for their kids and their family to someone praying. Now, while praying might be, extremely important to you, and I totally respect that, nobody's going to convince me that if you don't pray, you're going to die. I'm sorry. I just disagree with that aspect. I think we need to be consistent across the board, but I want to ask you about Governor Sisolak. And if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Annie Black, who was nice enough to come on our show, Mesquite City Council, also running for state assembly. Okay, Annie, do you think the Strip should be open? Because I'm trying to understand. I know you disagree with a lot of what Sisolak has said in the past and some of these ordinances. Tell me what you agree with and tell me what you disagree with, if that's okay.
Well, I mean, the Strip is that's just its own monster, right? Because we don't control that. The Gaming Control Board gets to decide whether they get to be open or not. But my family's been in the gaming business, and I was actually talking to my father about that. And he said, you know what, it's probably logical to close down casinos because you have people in close proximity to each other, and it is a very, for lack of a better word, it's a kind of a dirty environment just because you have money and you have a lot of people moving around touching a lot of different surfaces. So
right.
Whether I agree or disagree, that's not really in my purview. I mean, the Gaming Control Board said we're going to shut down, and that's what they did.
So. No, here's a better question for you. Obviously, considering the fact that it is a relatively dirty place and close proximity, the virus travels anywhere from 3 feet to 13 feet. It goes on the bottom of your shoe, et cetera. Now, they are clean, but do you think that this when the opening takes place, and let's assume that it's May 15th, May 1st to May 15th, I believe that the station casinos, the local casinos, should be open first because local people will go to those casinos. But the Strip obviously requires tourism, and I don't think we're going to get a lot of tourism probably for another month, maybe middle of June. But do you agree that the Strip, just for the simple fact that the Strip will not make any money if it opens up on May 1st, do you think that makes sense?
No, not necessarily. I mean, if you're going to allow casinos to be open, you need to allow casinos to be open. I think that's what I've been advocating for all along, is you can't cherry pick winners and losers. But what I will say is, even if we open tomorrow, I think we're going to see a substantial amount of people that just won't go. One of my businesses is a medical-related business, and these particular procedures have been deemed not emergent, right? So people are not going to go back into the ER to have brain and spine surgery unless they are the hospital to have brain and spine surgery after this is over for a while, because they're not going to want to go into a hospital and subject themselves to maybe getting corona, right? So there's still going to be lingering fear, even if we open everything up sometime next week. People are going to be afraid. So I don't know that. I feel like this whole thing is kind of a tidal wave, right? Like the water is sucking out right now, and it kind of looks bad, but I think the ramifications of all of this haven't even really hit us yet. Like, it's coming, but just to think that we open things back up and people aren't afraid anymore I don't think that's going to be the reality.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's going to take a long time to have any sense of normalcy, in every aspect of the word. I agree with you, Annie. Okay, so what do you disagree when it comes to Governor Sisolak? What has he done that you would have done differently?
I disagree with the lack of consistency that he's had with some of the things that we talked about. Why were you allowed to golf, but not go to a liquor store and get maybe drive up curbside alcohol, but you can get it from a restaurant. You can go order food, you can get a bottle of wine curbside, but you can't do it at a liquor store. You can go work at a construction site, but you can't, it's just like, why is there no consistency in what he's deemed essential and non-essential? So those are some things that I absolutely disagree with. Yeah. And then clearly, like, if people want to go to church and sit in their car and listen to their pastor and have fellowship, why can't they do that? I don't understand the logic there. And maybe it all goes back to a leadership issue. If you explain to people and convince them and help them understand instead of make it feel like you're coming at them as a dictator, then they're more likely to comply and less likely to push back. But this really feels like, if you think it's bad now, wait until you see how it's going to get. Yeah. Like if you're a child being reprimanded.
Fair enough. And by the way, I agree with you as far as inconsistencies, but I wouldn't just blame Sisolak for that. I would blame a lot of governors throughout the country. But you mentioned dictatorship. You mentioned leadership. Do you think Donald Trump is doing a good job in those two categories?
I think he's doing the best job that anybody in this situation can do. I mean, we're in uncharted territory, and that's why I don't envy the president. I don't envy the governor, but when you run for those positions and you want to be in those positions, that's where you are. It's definitely not, I'm sure, an easy place to be, but I'm sure that they're both doing what they feel is the right thing to do. I just don't always agree with it.
Do you disagree? No, and I respect that opinion, and nobody said it's easy to be a governor, let alone the president of the United States. But listen, there have been times where I've disagreed with Sisolak. The golf thing, you mentioned some good points about consistency. Yes, I wish Sisolak was more consistent. But I have to ask you about this on a more national scale. I wish the president wouldn't attack reporters on a regular basis. I wish the president wouldn't, play a 2-minute propaganda video like he did yesterday. And I really wish the president wouldn't talk about coronavirus press briefing ratings while people are dying in the masses. I would hope that we could at least agree on that.
Well, I think it works both ways. I don't think the press is a shining light of respect for this current president either. I mean, it's a two-way street. Respect is not given, it's earned, right? So I'm not going to make excuses for anyone, and I'm not in their shoes, but it's definitely a spectacle from both sides, and it's just, I don't think you can blame one party or the other completely. It takes two to tango, right?
Well, I'm not blaming a party. I'm just blaming the president. I'm not talking Republican or Democrat. I'm just saying
Donald. I mean a party of the argument, not a party.
Yeah, no, and listen, there's no question, and I've talked about this before, that, I'm sure there are members of the media that want President Trump to fail. There's no doubt about that. I'm just speaking in regards to some of these press conferences where he's been asked about test kits. He's been asked about, testing. He's been asked about ventilators. And then he calls people third-rate reporters, and he goes in the attack. I'm not trying to put you in a difficult position here. I just, you did mention dictatorship. You did mention leadership when it comes to Steve Sisolak, and I think you made some valid points there. I'm just trying to make some valid points, and I guess it's a difference of opinion. I think the president shows a lack of leadership when he talks about how high his ratings are in a press conference in regards to the coronavirus. I mean, that's really what I just think that's a perfect example of a lack of leadership. And by the way, yesterday, if you want to talk about dictatorship, it's the president of the United States who incorrectly said that he has the power over all governors. I'm sure you would agree that that was not factually accurate.
Well, I mean, it's clear that our governor's doing whatever he sees fit. I don't know that the president has a whole lot of input as far as that goes, because I don't think things will be handled the way they've been handled. But, I mean, I guess my response to the president and reporters and press conferences is, you know, at least he's got reporters at the press conference. The last Sisolak press conference I saw was empty room with someone from staff asking Sisolak questions and him reading off scripted answers. And it's like, I don't know what's better, you know, having reporters at your press conference who attack you and you return in jest, and then, or having no reporters at all and having this strange televised, I don't know if you saw that press conference, but it was very awkward and clear that he wasn't ready to take questions from a live audience, which is, I think, troubling from an optics standpoint, right? You want to know that your leader is competent and can at least field questions. So to me, that wasn't a very...
And listen, I'm not defending the governor.
Well, and you want to know that he's getting a haircut as well. It's very important that if Steve Sisolak waits to get a haircut, then everybody else to wait.
My understanding is the reason why he didn't have reporters is because they weren't allowed to be there, that he only wanted one or two people. That's my understanding, is he wasn't going to do any live press conferences with 20 or 30 members of the media. I think
he's also in Carson City.
Okay, well, I understand that, and that's a good point. That's another point. I mean, I guess I would say, can you name me a president in the history since we've been alive that hasn't had people show up to his press conferences? I'm not sure that's an accomplishment.
No, I think that what I'm saying is it's one thing to have someone on the phone asking questions that are coming from from live reporters, but it was clear that it seemed that those were canned questions that he was flipping through a 3-ring binder to respond to. And it's like, okay, I can respect you not having live people and maybe taking questions by the phone and actually answering them. But if you can't respond without looking at some notes, that kind of doesn't look very well to me.
Well, it helps to be good on your feet. And I think that in November, Joe Biden will have that same issue without a teleprompter in front of him or some type of script. Annie, when do you think that the Las Vegas economy opens, as well as the state of Nevada economy opens up? Do you think it happens May 1st, or do you think that we have to deal with one more month of this?
I think if we have to deal with one more month of this, we're going to be dealing with a lot more severe problems than coronavirus. I mean, we've already seen that domestic violence and suicide are way up. I mean, there's just the ramifications from this. Well,
people aren't thinking about the fact that right now, even before this happened, there was a massive opioid crisis. You have 20 million Americans that are battling substance abuse and addiction. And now a lot of them are at home without a job, without responsibilities, without drug tests. And very soon they're going to be getting paid by the government to do that, to not work and possibly spend their money, on their vices. So that has to be factored in. And then also you look at the state of Nevada. We're 29th in the country in cases. We were doing outstanding with mitigation before all these extra measures came through, like the golf courses and the haircuts, the in-home. At least we're not Michigan. At least we're not preventing people from visiting their friends at their homes. That's a positive. But that being said, we're 29th in cases. Our positive testing rate is 9%. To me, I think that a lot of what Sisolak has done, and I agree with you, is over the top because we're already doing so well. I mean, you can name us, especially with Las Vegas, name one tourist destination in the world that's doing better containing the coronavirus, than Las Vegas.
Well, and let's look at this, too, from every place is not the same, right? I'm in Mesquite. We're under the same restrictions that Las Vegas is under. And that would be like saying that Mesquite needs to be under the same restrictions that New York is under. I mean, you're comparing apples and oranges. And it's like, do I think that restrictions could be lifted in places like Mesquite so that at least we can start to get things moving again? Because the reality is we have 5 cases here. None of them have been hospitalized. And I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of those make a full recovery this week or next week, and so our number drops back down. And it's kind of, in my opinion, why are we subjecting every different place to the same kind of restrictions when it doesn't make any sense, right? It's just from a number standpoint, it doesn't.
And Annie, in Nevada right now, what's the unemployment from this? Is it about 300,000?
Yeah, that was the last number that I saw. I mean, I think it's going nuts, and I'm getting calls from constituents daily, in big trouble because they can't get through to unemployment. They're sitting on the phone for 8 hours, and then they get a recording that says, we've taken all of our calls for the day. And so it's like, how long into this before people start getting desperate after not having money? You know what I mean? We talked about the grocery stores earlier where food is a necessity. Well, if you can go to the store but you don't have any money, you can't get food. So at what point do people get super desperate and then things go real bad?
Well, let's say that number ends up at 350,000 or 400,000. Right now, there's 120 deaths in the entire state of Nevada. That would be 3,600 jobs for every life lost. That is an unbelievable number, and so it's a harrowing statistic, and I think we're on the same page, Annie.
Well, I'm glad. I hope that we, it's nice to be on the same page, but I hope that the objective is always to change hearts and minds, right? And to kind of, if you can, get on the same page with other people. And I hope that by talking to you guys today, we're able to do that a little bit.
Well, I mean, certainly we disagree on some things, but you're certainly a stand-up person for coming on our show and stating the case. And like I said, I don't disagree with everything you said about Governor Sisolak. There certainly needs more consistency. There certainly needs to be transparency. I would say that with any politician, not just Governor Sisolak. Annie Black, Mesquite City Council, you're running for state assembly, and we wish you the very best of luck. And maybe we can have you on again some point down the road. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks. This was really fun. Thanks for having me.
No, sure. Thanks a lot, Annie.
Appreciate it. That's
Okay,
Annie Black joining us.